that we are a Christian country, and we have historically been a Christian country, and the values that are so championed in this country are Christian.
Appeal to the West's religious tolerance, but knowing full well that they would not extend that same tolerance to you. Rupert Lowe's right-hand man that shuts down this Muslim advocate live on TV. On the surface, it seems like a debate about halal slaughter, but it's really about something much deeper. It's about whether, as a country, Britain should bend its laws and change its culture to accommodate religious minorities, or if Britain should stand its ground and protect its culture. So let's have a watch.
Both halal slaughter, which is practiced by Muslims, and kosher slaughter, which is practiced by Jews, involve killing an animal that is otherwise fully conscious by cutting its throat with, in the Jewish case, they're very strict about a single cut. Islam is not as strict about whether it's a single cut or multiple cuts, and then the animal bleeds to death and dies.
It sounds cruel.
It sounds cruel, but when people have tried to carry out tests to assess levels of pain using electrodes in the brain, etc., there's no evidence that it is actually cruel that animals suffer any more pain than if they're killed by, for example, having a bolt through the head.
Well, can you just explain the religious significance of why you do it that way? What is the point? Why couldn't you just do it in a more, some would argue, humane way? Is there a religious significance?
Yes, there is a religious significance. If you pick up and read your Old Testament, you will see a clear categorical prohibition against consuming blood. And the Jewish scholars, long before the rise of Islam, made it very clear that it involves killing the animal so it bleeds to death. You're not allowed to, in the Bible, you're not allowed to, from memory, a long time ago since I read the Bible, to eat animals that have been strangled, for example. And Islam, which is a religion in the same path as Judaism and Christianity, has adopted the same principles.
The question is not just about the cruelty as well. The question is, why should there be religious exemptions for people that have a foreign culture and a foreign religion in Christian Britain? That's really the question, because everybody else has to stun their meat before it's slaughtered, except Jews and Muslims. But isn't that two-tier justice?
Now, Charlie, you're someone who takes religious freedom very seriously. How could you defend banning halal and kosher practices and also maintaining religious freedom at the same time?
Well, I think it comes back to this debate about how we should approach the topic of religion in the modern world, because Britain historically is a Christian country. I believe that it remains a Christian country, even though so many people now identify as atheists. And I don't think, therefore, that there is any particular issue with prioritizing Christian interests over the interests of other religious groups, because we are a Christian country. And it doesn't surprise me, actually, that this petition and this issue more generally has taken such a hold on the public imagination, because Britain has a very long and proud history of animal welfare. We were actually the first country in history to pass animal welfare legislation in 1822 with the Cruel Treatment of Cattle Act. But I think that there is, halal is an issue. I'm not comfortable with halal slaughter being practiced in the UK. I do think it's cruel. I think, I've read the studies that say that there's no greater degree of pain or anything like that. And sure, that may well be true, but it's actually the practice itself. It is the nature of the act itself that I think is barbaric, quite frankly. But that's not to say that we don't have other issues, because I think that many people in this debate will cite things like kosher, and they will also cite things like factory farming. And I think these are just as evil as halal. I think that we have a real problem in the West in general with animal welfare. I think that we treat our animals very, very poorly. I mean, there are millions of chickens living in factory farm conditions. There are thousands of cows living in zero grazing conditions. And so many of these animals live awful lives. And I think it's just really gross, quite frankly. And I think there needs to be a far more widespread conversation about animal welfare in the 21st century.
On this point about religious tolerance, one thing a lot of Muslim advocates will do is they'll appeal to the West's religious tolerance in order to have their way of life adopted. But knowing full well that if Islam became the dominant worldview of our land, they would not extend that same tolerance to you. They would not extend that to you. So we need to be able to see that deception and not be taken advantage of it.
Mr. Amin, what would be the impact if halal practices were to be banned? What would be the impact on Muslim and Jewish communities in the UK?
The impact on Muslim and Jewish communities would be that they would either not be able to eat meat, or they would have to import meat that had been killed in a kosher or halal way overseas.
So
I find it so interesting that Britain is one of the few countries in the world where you're expected to be able to come over to Britain and find everything you had from your home culture. It's like there's no expectation for you to assimilate, no expectation for you to compromise. You don't even need to speak English, for goodness sake. This is madness.
I do want to respond to this point about Britain being a Christian country. The idea that Christians would deliberately trample over the rights of Jews, Muslims, or indeed other religious groups if they were relevant. For example, Hindu people want to be able to burn dead bodies out in public, that you would be able to trample over other people's religious beliefs. I think it's fundamentally
But Mr.
wrong.
Amin, this
Listen to what he's saying. We should be able to come over to any country we want, any Christian country, and maintain our practices. Who cares what you guys believe? Who cares how you do things? We should be able to come and impose our way because it's religiously tolerant. This is why the word tolerance, I'm so glad it's not a word that the Bible ever uses. It's not a command to be tolerant. We are meant to be able to discern between what is good and what is evil and reject what is evil and pursue what is good, no matter how you feel about it.
is where this rights-based understanding of freedom really falls down, doesn't it? Because there are always clashes of rights. And Charlie, how do we navigate this? How do we maintain religious freedom when actually some religions, and I'm not talking about halal slaughter here, but have practices that are deeply offensive to other religions, perhaps even Christianity?
Well, I think the answer, Miriam, is quite simple, and that's what I've said already, which is we should be unashamed in the fact and aware of the fact, that we are a Christian country, and we have historically been a Christian country, and the values that are so championed in this country are Christian. And the idea that we have to take on this kind of neutral, unattached perspective on these issues, as if we're, as if the role of the state, for example, is to be some neutral arbiter between sort of infighting religious groups, I think is silly. I think that the state, for example, should have a position on these issues, because I think fundamentally there is, as a religious person myself, I do believe there is such a thing as objective right and wrong. And I think that the state should seek to discover what those things are. And when we see practices like halal, which in my opinion are, God gave us dominion over animals, as it says in the Bible, and I just don't think it's the right way to treat our animals. And so, yeah.
The real question is this: should Britain have one law for the majority and a separate law for the minority religious groups? Because that literally by definition is two-tier justice. And that also will be taken advantage of, because the minorities will not be minorities forever. And if minorities are told, we can fundamentally change your way of life, your customs, and things that you hold very dearly, even with the small percentage of people that we are now. What happens when they become bigger and bigger and bigger? I'll tell you what happens. You lose the country that you've come to know and love. Two-tier justice is happening at the very top of our government. And to see another example of that being exposed live on TV, check out the video on your screen. I know you'll be blessed by it. I'll see you there. Peace and blessings.